Hello and welcome back to Planet 40k. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Necron Lord and we'll find out if he's still actually usable in 9th edition. So this model is from the HQ section of the book. He's your cheapest HQ option. He's your cheapest method of getting the noble unit on the table. Comes in at 70 points at a base cost or 5 power level if you're playing power. Now let's get through those keywords of note before we proceed. So he's obviously got the dynasty keyword, he is a character, he carries the noble keyword, he's a lord and an infantry model. So pretty basic keywords for a Necron character model, but as mentioned he has the all important noble keyword to unlock command protocols army wide. As for his stats, movement 6 inch, web skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 5, toughness 5, wounds 4, attacks 3, leadership 10 and a 3+ save. So he doesn't hit on 2s like an overlord and has 1 less wound and 1 less attack as well, but this is expected as he's a cheaper version of the overlord. Still strength 5 and toughness 5, which isn't too bad. Ability wise, he's got living metal to regain lost wounds and of course command protocols, which will always be active while he's alive. He then has the Lord's Will, which is in the command phase. You select a friendly dynasty core unit within 9 inches of the model. Then until the start of the next command phase, each time a model makes an attack, you reroll a hit roll of 1. So that's working in ranged and melee attacks. So this one's actually quite interesting because it's not an aura like a My Will Be Done ability from an overlord. So it only works on a single core unit. Now the fact that it's not an aura has an advantage as well as a disadvantage. Now the advantage being that the core unit does not need to stay within 9 inches of the Lord model, so this can be set upon a core unit before they go off doing their own thing, such as going off with a character holding the Veil of Darkness relic. However, the disadvantage, as already mentioned, is the fact that it's only going to work on one single unit, not multiple units. But I feel like it's quite a fitting ability for the model, as I wouldn't want him up the board, and I'll get into that later. His other ability here is Relentless March, which is an aura for core units within 9 inches to get a +1 to their movement or advance roll. It's not bad on a slow moving back line. As for his Wargear, he comes stocked with a Staff of Light. So as you know, it's both a melee and a shooting weapon. Both variants are strength 5, -2 AP and 1 damage. And if you're shooting with it, you're getting 3 shots. And in combat, he also has 3 attacks. So they're virtually the same profile. So it's not a bad weapon. It's lightly wounded on 3s. And the AP is nice, but it's only 1 damage. So it isn't doing much to anyone, really, especially with the limited attacks. Now we can upgrade his Staff of Light to a Voltic Staff. So the upgrade is a +1 to the strength and +1 to the damage. And also you're going to be getting 2 extra hits for every 6 that you hit with. So on average you're going to be getting all your misses back due to 6s giving 2 more hits. So a very valuable upgrade, especially against 2 wounded models. Now even against Death Guard, you might not get the extra damage to go off due to disgustingly resilience, but at least you're going to be wounded on 3s against them. There is another relic option to upgrade a Staff of Light, which is from the Nefric dynasty called the Solar Staff. So it's an increased range of 24 inches and it's Assault 6. Strength 5 -2 AP 1 damage, and the melee profile was the exact same. However, the weapon does have an ability, which is if you score a hit against an infantry unit, then until the end of the turn that unit is blinded, and blinded units cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend. Now it's not really my cup of tea, this one, but it is there if you need it. As for the datasheet upgrades, there's the Hyperphase Sword, which is strength +1, making it strength 6, -3 AP and the damage is 1. Now if you are against Death Guard, then okay, you're going to be wounded on 3s. Or against say Elder and other toughness 3 factions, then you're going to wound on 2s. It's got a slightly better AP here, but against everyone else you're better off with a Staff of Light. In fact, you need to bear in mind that this weapon is going to replace the shooting capabilities of the Staff of Light as well as the melee, so it's probably not worth it. You can go for a Void Blade, strength user, making it strength 5, -3 AP and 1 damage, and you get an extra attack with it. Now don't even bother with this, it's junk. You give up your 3 strength 5 range shots just to have 1 additional attack in melee, no thank you. Then the last option here is taking the War Scythe. Strength +2 making it strength 7, -4 AP, 2 damage. Now before I talk about this weapon, there is an upgrade option which is a relic called the Blood Scythe from the Novak dynasty, which is virtually the same stat line except you get 2 additional attacks with it. Or there's the Void Reaper, which becomes damage 3 and no feel no pain saves can be made against it. That's another relic. Now usually I rave about the War Scythe. It's a great melee weapon, but on a Necron Lord I'm not taking it. I don't want my Necron Lord going up into a fight. He's got no invuln save. If you wanted a choppy type of noble unit, then get yourself an Overlord. Realistically, this guy's here for 2 reasons and fighting isn't one of them. Firstly, he's a cheap way to get command protocols on the board, and secondly, he's the cheapest way to carry a resurrection orb, so you don't need him fighting up the board. So for 30 points you can take a resurrection orb. Once per battle in the command phase, the bearer can use the orb, but if it does, select one friendly dynasty unit within 6 inches of the bearer that is not at its starting strength, then that unit's reanimation protocols are enacted, and every destroyed model in the unit can begin to reassemble. Now almost every time you take an orb you're going to profit in terms of points, as you bring back way more than 30 points in terms of dead warriors and other units. Now the HQ model itself is a tax, but he also grants buffs and whatnot, and you do need a HQ in a detachment anyway, so it's not the worst deal when you have to pay for one. Now you can upgrade this orb to an Orb of Eternity relic, which is effectively the same thing as a resurrection orb, but it now works on a 4+ roll instead of a 5+ roll. So that's the options you have for the Necron Lord. Now looking at the synergy side, Warlord traits to begin with, there's not really much that stand out for your Necron Lord. Possibly Thrall of the Silent King to increase his Lord's will ability to a 12-inch range. It's probably the only one there that's worth a look. Dynasty codes, there's no point really looking at these guys, as they're not really fulfilling any of the key roles that this guy actually does. So it can sort of go into any dynasty really. We've mentioned a few relics, but we've yet to discuss a few of the others. Now I wouldn't use a Veil of Darkness on him. I'll explain a little bit more in detail in the conclusion of the video, but just like I said, I don't want him up the board. He's got access to the Sempiternal Weave to add +1 to his toughness and wounds. Not sure if he'll need this. So that just leaves the Stratagems. So you've got Resurrection Protocols for 1 CP, which is if the model is destroyed. On a 4+, you can stand him back up again with D3 wounds remaining. Now I don't really like this because it's a 4+ roll. Half the time it works, half the time it don't. But it may be useful if you've yet to use your Resurrection Orb on your Noble Lord, because maybe he got sniped off the table or whatnot, so worth a go with that one. He's also got access to Dynastic Heirlooms for the extra relic in the army, or Rarefied Nobility for the extra Warlord trait, although I'd not bother really giving him a Warlord trait as mentioned. So this kind of just leads me to talk tactics and to conclude the model. So the reason I'd not be kitting this guy out with a good melee weapon is very simple. The reason you're taking this model is to save points. Unless you've got a real dying urge to just take a Lord and throw him up the table with a War Scythe, there's just not really a point to it. He's purely there to save you 25 points, as you don't need to take an Overlord model. Now if you wanted an Overlord model, that's fine, but if you're staying back in a blob of Warriors or Immortals or even Death Marks, and just holding on to an orb, then the question is, do you need to invest that extra 25 points into an Overlord when a Lord is just doing the same sort of thing? And the chances are you probably paid for a melee weapon too with the Overlord, which will cost you 5 points. If your Noble is in your back line surrounded by core units and is not likely to be getting into combat and isn't expected to be doing much damage, especially from range, so paying the minimum cost for the ability to buff your troops and get command protocols on the table is more ideal than buffing an Overlord model. Not only that, if you did want a choppy Noble on the board doing damage, then maybe you should be grabbing a command barge, because that's a lot better, a lot tougher, a lot more wounds, and can do all sorts of damage. And even if you didn't care about the command protocols, then just get yourself a Scorpec Lord. I actually think having a Necron Lord is a great benefit to Necron players to have a cheap option within the Codex. It's similar to a Space Marine Lieutenant, except for Lieutenants modify their wound roll, not the hit roll, whereas the Necron Lord is still buffing the hit rolls, quite like an Overlord, so it is a direct alternative, although the Lord's will is a reroll of 1s, whereas My Will Be Done is a +1 to hit. Now you do have the option of stacking both abilities together by taking a Lord as well as an Overlord. Not something I'd really advise, as you're pumping a minimum of 165 points for that benefit, and that's before Wargear upgrades. And the whole point of taking a Necron Lord is to save points. Even though they're a very similar model to the Overlord, they do have a different role in my opinion. Overlords are pretty good in combat and have a 4+ in 1 save, so they're a really good model to be putting relics on, such as a Veil of Darkness, whereas your Lord just isn't. He's got no in 1 save and he's got less attacks and a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3, so it's just not as good, but it's not meant to be. So that brings me to the rating. Now this one's one of the trickiest ratings yet, to be honest. Now spoiler alert, the Overlord got a 3.5 from me towards the end of 2020. Now I'm going to be giving the Necron Lord the same rating of a 3.5. Now I get why a lot of people see this model as trash, but the whole point in an Overlord is for the command protocols and the orb, and perhaps My Will Be Done, but that's it. The Lord does 2 out of 3 of those, and the third he gets to reroll 1s anyway, which is almost as good as My Will Be Done. So why pay more for it is the question there. I think there's no point going for a mid-ground Overlord. You're either going to go up the board with a command barge, or you're going to stay at home with a Necron Lord. If you're wanting a unit to stay back, then the Lord's the guy to go to. It's that simple. That's what I think anyway. Let me know if you agree or disagree below. Don't forget to sub if you are new to the channel for regular Necron content. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.